What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim, and I have a very special guest. As you listen, you get to hear the great sounds of my dear friend, Christopher Ebersole, maybe the first listener for a while, maybe the only listener. No, it's not true.
Yeah,
But Chris, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's good to be on this show. I know my dad's really excited, so you got to include him in there with the first couple listeners. But
That's true, Jimbo. You are definitely in there as the first couple of starting this thing up. Just so you guys know, just to establish who Chris is, I know I've talked about Chris a lot on this show. Chris is many things to me. One is just a good friend, a brother that I would say in the Lord. We work together in ministry, but ever since you were a student at East Stroudsburg, which ironically is where James Franklin graduated, so Penn State, there you go. But ever since you were a student, you would kind of joke with me about me being an Ohio State guy. And that was, I think, in 2016, right?
Yeah, at a conference.
Yeah. And then we struck up a good friendship, and then you came to our area to serve at Bucknell and Susquehanna University in ministry, and we never stopped talking ball.
Yep. Yeah, I remember moving out here and playing some, before it was college football, NCAA football at night, getting back from campus. So, yeah, it's fun to not just play football, but finally get to talk about it here.
Yep. Well, and we got a big game for Penn State to talk about at the end of the show. So for you Penn Staters and you Illini fan, which I know you Illini fans, you're listening and you're really hoping that I pick against Illinois, because every time I pick against Illinois, you guys win. So stay tuned for my prediction to see if I'm wrong. But we'll start. We'll get right into it. Friday night, Washington traveling to the mighty Fighting Schianos of Rutgers. Rutgers, a 2.5-point favorite at home. It's an 8 p.m. kick on Friday night on Fox. And, Washington coming off a win. I'm trying to remember who they played last week. All of a sudden, I'm blanking on them. They played Northwestern. They played their Big Ten opener against Northwestern. Rutgers obviously coming off a big road win over Virginia Tech, where they honestly should have won by more. Who do you got in this game and why, Chris?
Yeah, I think Rutgers gets it done at home, protecting the birthplace of college football.
There you go.
Yeah, 27-20 victory. I actually think with their sloppy game last week and the fact that they should have scored more and it should have been more impressive of a win looking back at the scoreboard, I think they really cleaned things up at home.
Yeah, I like that. I really agree with you there, because I think on the last show, 41-7 should have been the score, and when Virginia Tech scored again. Now you can take away and say, but this would have happened. But the fact is, they left a lot of points on the board. I am concerned about Washington's defense for Rutgers. They have played just very sound football, and I think this is going to be a defensive game, because I think Washington's defense is going to be the strongest defense that Rutgers has faced. And they've held every team below their average. Like Washington State, they're not a great team, and I know they lost to them, but Washington State has been an explosive offense, and they really held them in check. They held their running game in check. They had a running quarterback in that game. I think they might take Virginia Tech's blueprint and really stuff the run. But I think Rutgers defense is going to be a little bit more effective in this game. I think Will Rogers might struggle in this game. I think, as much as I think Jonah Coleman is a good back, I think the defensive line for Rutgers is going to give Washington some trouble. Low scoring. So I've got Rutgers covering. I think you had 27-20.
20.
I've got it 17-13. So we're similar on scores, but I think I have them a little lower scoring.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I think talking to Washington's strength as a defense, it seemingly came out of nowhere that Rutgers, I feel like a couple years ago, started having a really strong and stingy defense. And I think I'm actually really curious to see the running back battle between Jonah Coleman and Kyle Monangai. I think at the end of the day, looking at the stats, it'll actually look like Jonah Coleman had a better day running the ball than Monangai. I think they're really going to try and stop him up there.
Yeah, and I think to that point, the person who really impressed me against Virginia Tech was Kaliakmanis.
Mm-hmm.
Over 10 yards an attempt. They forced Kaliakmanis to really move the ball, and he did it. And I think we're seeing that Kurt Soraka, Ethan Kaliakmanis, that reuniting of those two. I think that really has gelled, and I think Rogers has played well, but their offense has not always been in sync. They've been a little bit herky-jerky throughout the first 4 games. They've been a little undisciplined, and they have to go on the road. So but I agree with you. I think Coleman, I feel like we keep talking about Coleman on this show, and not enough people have seen him play. But I think Monangai and Sam Brown, they have a little bit more. I think their combined stats might be more than Coleman, but I agree. I think Coleman will have the best day out of any running back.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a big thing, not just going down the coast, but going across the country. I think we'll start to see, I'm curious, as a Penn State fan going out to USC soon, I'm curious to see the effects of what that travel will look like for these East Coast teams going west and vice versa.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed. I think this will be a fun one, especially on a Friday.
Yeah.
And yeah, just curious how that affects Washington in this. Well, let's go to Saturday, and we'll start with the Little Brown Jug as Minnesota goes to number 12 Michigan. It's big noon kickoff game. Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson on the call. Michigan a 9-point favorite after beating USC. I feel like that line it's odd to me, but I'm curious, what's your take on this game?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious actually, what is odd about the 9 points? Do you think it should be bigger, lower? Where are you at?
So you're forcing my hand. I like it. I saw Minnesota just get crushed by Caleb Johnson.
Yeah.
And they didn't throw the ball well, right? Cade McNamara, I think he's probably a little bit better thrower than Alex Orji, but it's not by much.
Yeah, we'll see.
And it's not just McNamara, it's the receivers. It's I think the offensive scheme is still a bit back in the 1950s. But Caleb Johnson and that offensive line for Iowa really, really pounded Minnesota's defense in a way that I don't think anyone expected.
Yeah.
And I might concede, I think Iowa's offensive line might be better than Michigan's, because I think Michigan has a particular weak link on the right side of that line. But I know what they want to do. They want to smash. And I think with the adjustment to Alex Orji, I think they're really willing to just go, do that 32 straight run thing. And I think if they give Khalil Mullings the rock, I like Michigan to pound on them. And I think the defense for Michigan, I don't know, seeing what Iowa did to Minnesota at home, and now Minnesota's got to go on the road and try to establish their offense against a defense that I think will not have to be on the field that much, because I think they're going to force Brosmer to try to beat him through the air. I think they're going to get stops. I don't think they're going to get super tired. So I'm kind of expecting a similar game from Minnesota that I saw them play against Iowa. Is why I think the line is weird to me. But I'm curious, do you have opposite thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I think I looked at it. I looked at this game a lot more from Michigan's perspective, I think, than Minnesota's perspective. And honestly, part of it is just the bias that I know Michigan more. But I think, Josh Pate says you never always play the same team twice, right? So there's like a bunch of different variations of a way that a team can play. And sometimes you get their like A game and sometimes you get their C game. I think after a very emotional week for Michigan, thinking back to how much they, as a program, kind of really needed to have this game against USC last week, I wonder if this isn't necessarily a look ahead spot for Michigan, but more so just it's hard to maintain that level of high emotion. And I don't know. I could just see them coming out slow. I actually said that I think that they might come out really slow. Minnesota might actually be leading at the half, something like 10-3. But I think
Okay.
Michigan really puts the clamps on them in the second half. And I actually predicted I don't think Minnesota is going to get into the red zone the second half. So I have
Oof.
Michigan winning a close game, 20-13, banking on a slow start from the high emotions of a
Yeah.
huge win for the program, beating USC. I mean, just imagine the optics of this new program, right, with Sharon Moore. It's his team now, and before September's out, they're 2-2 with 2 losses at home. I think they really needed that USC win.
Yeah.
I'm just
Agreed.
wondering, yeah, how long you can ride that high going into a game with Minnesota, where honestly Michigan might look at it and say we match up even better.
That's
Having USC be the favorite, going to a Minnesota team that looked very pedestrian, especially in the second half against Iowa. So I wonder if a little overconfidence maybe, and
yeah.
the letdown spot for them. But yeah, I have Michigan winning.
Yeah. So you got 2013.
Mhm.
I have 24-6. I just really I don't see Minnesota, but I think to your point, Chris, I think you make a really good point about the letdown. And I mean, USC and Michigan fans know that from what I've seen from both those teams, I don't think they're nearly as good as their ranking is right now.
Mhm.
And so and Minnesota had, Daniel Jackson remains one of the most underrated receivers. Not
Mhm.
not here. Like I am a Daniel Jackson believer. He had over 100 yards against Iowa. I think like he could get loose for a quick score. We don't know the status on Will Johnson. At least I don't
Yeah.
think as of yet. This is Monday night. This is coming out on Thursday, so he like Will Johnson might play. We're not sure. Um, if Will Johnson is out, that does change things a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I have a tough time seeing Minnesota just based on what I've seen against two, like, honestly, kind of average teams, like against UNC. I know that was first game of the season, but then watching them against Iowa, and part of this is my PJ Fleck anti-bias. I just feel like he gets stuck in things and
Mhm.
kind of continues. Like the trends typically bear out for him. Like
Sure.
I saw a stat that they've allowed over 200 rush yards to the last 5 Power 4 opponents that they've played. And that's it's a team that's supposed to be predicated on defense, right?
Yeah.
And toughness. And now you're playing Michigan, who that's all they want to do is run.
Mhm.
I have a concern about that. But
Yeah.
I think you are right that it very well could be like a backdoor Minnesota cover, or that it's closer than I think because of the emotions. So I think it's reasoned analysis there.
Yeah.
Um,
Looking at
but
the game, you never really feel like Michigan is super in danger looking at the talent disparity. But
yeah,
yeah, you see.
yeah, good stuff. I think that this game will also have a talent disparity. Ohio State, number 3 in the country, going to East Lansing, 7 o'clock on Peacock, because of course it's on the network that you have to pay for. Don't get me started on Peacock. Anyway, this is a 24.5 point spread in favor of Ohio State. Michigan State coming off a heartbreaking loss to Boston College.
Mhm.
Ohio State coming off, kind of a ho-hum win, playing Marshall, probably the best team they've played in the non-conference, which isn't saying much. What's your feel on this game?
Yeah. Well, what do you think about Coach Huff coming after your players with his biscuits deal?
Dude, I thought it was hilarious, man. So
There's no trepidations in the Ohio State locker room, though. Everyone's sticking with the Buckeyes right now. Is that what we're
listen,
saying?
I think Ryan Day might leave for the
Yeah.
biscuits, man. Like Ryan Day actually addressed that, and he was like, "We got to have some fun in here," and he like was chuckling about it. So I thought it was I thought it was a great great moment in a press conference, like for a team that's going to collect a paycheck, right?
Yeah, for sure, for
But
sure.
like, I mean, and they played their butts off on
Yeah,
Saturday. Like, I give a lot of credit to Huff. Like, I thought he had his guys prepared, especially in the first half. But
yeah, yeah, for sure. Thinking of the game, Ohio State, Michigan State. I'm going to be honest. Even if Ohio State starts slow, I heard you talking with Jr. On the previous episode that you guys put out. With that slow start, 28-14, I believe it was against Marshall. I just don't see Michigan State being able to hang with them. I think Aiden Childs is a phenomenal talent, but I think he plays a little bit too much hero ball, and I think in this game, we're just going to continue to see that pan out. So I think he has a couple great throws. I think there's more interceptions that get added to his stat sheet at the end of this game as well. I think Michigan State on defense will be able to slow down maybe a little bit the OSU rushing attack, but I actually predict both Judkins and Travion will get both of them getting 20 plus yard rushes this game. And Jeremiah Smith probably adds to his touchdown tally as well. So I have Ohio State winning fairly comfortably, 41-13.
yeah, I have the exact same score, and I think it will be another slow start for Ohio State because I think Michigan State is better in the trenches than people want to give credit for, including like I did not.
Yeah.
I was very, very down on them. And this is not we talked about Michigan State on the Big Ten huddle. We talked about Michigan State. Are they Nebraska? And I don't think that's a fair from a year ago. Sorry, Nebraska from a year ago. Like, are they just turnover prone? And there was a difference because yes, Michigan State's turnover prone, but the talent is different. Like Jeff Sims was not like, I guess if you stuck with him and developed him, maybe he could be something good. But like Aiden Childs, you see the talent.
Yeah.
Like you really see the talent. And they have like Nick Marsh is a good freshman receiver. They have a decent backfield at Carter and Lynch Adams. But I think the fact that Childs is a bit turnover prone and they're just young and they are a couple notches below in terms of talent.
Yeah.
And I think we see something similar to what we see in the Marshall game, where I think the first quarter, Ohio State fans are like ready to tar and feather Ryan Day because that's how we are. And then in the second quarter, there's kind of like 2 or 3 straight scores, and this gets out of hand pretty quickly. And I think one of those scores will be a pick six. Like
Yeah.
I think this might actually be a Caleb Downs game where
Mhm.
he thinks he can get away with something, and Downs undercuts a route and takes it back for a touchdown. And I think people will feel like the offense is a little bit in second gear at times, but I think they get the job done. It's a 28-point win. They cover, and it'll be enough for some people to be like, "Yeah, Ohio State was dominant," and some people will be like, "Ohio State stinks," and Ryan Day should be fired. And it's world goes around in Columbus.
Yeah. I was gonna say, as an Ohio State fan, what would you like to see out of Ohio State in this game?
Murder is what I would like to see. No, I think I want to see Will Howard continue to progress, and I want to see them shut down the run game. Like I think that's the thing that concerned me with Marshall was that they allowed and third down conversion too. Like they allowed drives to fester. They couldn't hold the running game. And that's where I think Aiden Childs can actually kill us a bit, is that like he's got wheels and he could pick up third downs if he's able to see it. So like I that's where I'm like, I think this could be like 28, like it could be like 21-13 in the second quarter. And then Ohio State kind of puts it out of reach with another score, and then they adjust. But I think evolution of the passing game, run defense, and third down conversion rate on defense. Like those are I think the 3 key things.
Yeah. Do you know if you guys are going to be completely healthy? I think you were missing Tyleek Williams, right?
Yeah, they said day to day. I would not be surprised if Day keeps him out, just because you now have Iowa and Oregon
Mhm.
back to back. And as much as I make fun of Cade McNamara, I think the Iowa game is actually going to be tougher than people think, because
Mhm.
I think Iowa is going to give Ohio State some fits, particularly with the linebackers for Ohio State. I think they're athletic, but Sonny Styles was taking some angles that you're like, why are you taking that angle? And I think if you're going to exploit Ohio State's defense, it's at that linebacker spot currently. Now I think they can coach him up. I think Cody Simon is playing well, and Arvell Reese has been a key contributor that I think might get more playing time.
Mhm.
But the other guy, like CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles, both have struggled a bit in defense. Hicks way more than Styles. I think Hicks is a good blitzer, but
Yeah.
Styles were really relying on him to be a key guy at linebacker, and it was the first time he's really struggled. And so that makes me wonder if they were flat, but I do think that is, if you're going to attack any point of this defense, it's the linebackers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I really like Nick Marsh. There was a point in his recruitment where I thought Penn State was going to swing him away, but it is good to see. Yeah, he's having a really good man. I feel like a lot of Big Ten freshman receivers are doing really good this year. But
yeah,
yeah,
a
Nick
lot
Marsh
of good.
up there.
Yeah. So we both got 41-13.
Yeah,
Let me move us on. Speaking of really good receivers in the Big Ten, Indiana's got a lot of good receivers, and Maryland has a couple of really good receivers. We don't talk about Caden Prather a lot.
yeah.
And part of the reason why is because Ty Felton is, I believe, leading the nation as a receiver in receiving yards, 41 catches, 604 yards. This game's at 12 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. Indiana, a 7-point favorite. It's still a bit odd to keep saying that Indiana is a favorite, especially as we continue in Big Ten play. Indiana with their first 4-0 start in a long time. I should have looked up that stat. But how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I don't see them getting a loss in this game. I think
Okay.
I think one of the surprises of the season so far has been the connection between, speaking of Maryland, Billy Edwards and Ty Felton. They've really been nothing short of remarkable. Ty Felton is 7 catches for 119 yards and 1 touchdown, away from matching his season high for receptions, yards, and touchdowns. The problem is they're running into the group of 5 all-stars and the Fighting Signettis of Indiana, and I just don't know if Billy Felton and or Billy Edwards and Ty Felton, and even Caden Prater, good name. I don't know if they're going to be enough. I think Indiana. I just looked this up. They have a top 5 scoring offense and top 10 scoring defense. I just don't see Maryland going out west and having enough juice to escape with a win. I think too that, like, I know you can make the claim, well, Indiana hasn't played anyone, but even giving their schedule, if you would have polled media members and coaches, thinking at Big Ten media days, I don't think many of them would have seen this start for Indiana, especially just
Yep.
sheer dominance in a lot of these games.
Yeah.
I believe even like
In every game, they've dominated every game. Yeah.
was FIU, and I think that was 31-7. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think they've just had such a great start. I think Chris Signetti has them in a great spot. And yeah, I just see the momentum continuing to go for Indiana. I have Indiana winning 31-24, so just on the edge of that 7 points, and going 5-0 heading into next week, where they get to play at a beautiful high school stadium off the coast of Lake Michigan.
That's the Westlot Pirates podcast is not going to like you calling it a high school stadium, but that's
Beautiful.
okay. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. That's well done sliding that in there. I would, and say your score prediction one more time.
Yeah, 31-24.
31-24. 31-24. We're pretty close on this one. I think you make a really good point that it's not just that Indiana has won, it's that they've dominated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that matters because I think when we've talked about Indiana in the past doing well, it's like they might have some squeakers against, MAC teams. That's not what they're doing, right? I mean, their lowest margin of victory is 24.
Mhm.
And again, the competition has been great, but and we can't transitive property this thing to death. But I mean, they beat UCLA by a higher score differential than LSU.
Mhm.
So like they have legit guys like Elijah Surratt at at receiver. I think Curtis Rourke is
Yeah.
maybe a top 5 quarterback in the league.
Mhm.
Like he is legit good. And it's maybe not NFL good, but like legit college good. Like
Mhm.
could carry his team to a really good season type of quarterback.
Mhm.
And I think the line play is better than I expected. I think the defense is better than I expected. I I do think Maryland's going to give them some issues. I think the passing attack is going to get loose. Like I don't think they're going to fully stop it. But I think to your point, where I'm concerned with Maryland is I'm concerned about their run game and
Mhm.
them being able to keep the Terrapins on schedule because they've not necessarily been great in run blocking and the running game. And I think they've relied a lot on Billy Edwards, relied a lot on the receivers, and I think they're going to need to run to kind of stay in this or to kind of get them over the top. And I just don't think they have it. I
Mhm.
will say this will be easily the best defense that Indiana faces. Like
Yeah.
I think Maryland's defense is underrated. That secondary is good. And so I would not be surprised if Rourke throws a pick, maybe even 2 in this
Mhm.
game. But I don't think it's enough for them to lose. I think it ends up being really good experience for Rourke as he experiences a Big Ten defense, like a good Big Ten defense.
Yeah.
I've got 28-24 Indiana. I think Maryland covers, but I think Indiana wins.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think I've been really impressed with Curtis Rourke's poise, even going back to the UCLA game. First Big Ten game on the road at UCLA, and I think he completed like 4 third down throws on their first drive. Like he's just been dialed in. So yeah, I think that's a great point. If you could rattle him, we'll see. But yeah, I definitely would agree. I think it's going to be a close game. Definitely the closest of the year. And I think it's going to be a really good matchup. I'm really eager to see how this one plays out.
Yeah. His poise, I think that's why he can throw like if he throws a pick or two, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like I think that I appreciate you bringing up that point about his poise because I think that is his greatest asset that
Mhm.
I noticed against UCLA wasn't phased by travel, wasn't phased by a near miss, wasn't phased by a bad snap. He just went about his business. It's like, okay, let's keep going. So
Yeah, and we'll see how he looks when he faces some adversity potentially from a tough defense. But
yep. Yep. Well, Purdue's going to face a tough defense this week in the Cornhuskers, who I'm sure are angry as all get out after what happened last Friday. Nebraska, Purdue, 12 p.m. on Peacock. Nebraska, a 10-point favorite. Can Purdue shock the world here?
unless it's in the same vein as when they shocked the world against Notre Dame and didn't show up to their home stadium, I don't think
Oof.
they'll do much
Oof.
against Nebraska. That was
Oof.
just really hard to watch.
Yeah, it
So
was.
yeah, Dylan Raiola coming back after a tough loss. I'm curious how he does, especially the first couple drives after just the way that game ended against Illinois. It's really a great game. But I think the way that they lost with, those back-to-back sacks, just going the wrong way in overtime. I'm curious how, the mental toll maybe that takes on him this week, and I'm curious to see. Like we've never get to see what he looks like bouncing back from adversity. So
Yep.
I'm curious how the game starts, but yeah, I don't project it to be too close between Nebraska and Purdue. Um, yeah, I probably have like a 34 to let's see. No, let's go 38 17 Nebraska.
38-17. We have the same score differential. I just gave them 7 points less each. 31-10. So we're pretty close on this. Man, I really wanted Purdue to do well. I really
Yeah.
was high on Ryan Walters.
Hmm.
I think the line play is just it's not there. Like
Yeah.
It's not Big Ten quality.
Hmm.
And I think that's I mean, seeing them struggle like they did against Oregon State,
Hmm.
it's just sad. And you know, I know Maccabee had a good game against Oregon State, but in general, that's not how they want to play. Like they want to throw the ball. Hudson Card has not been good, and I think part of that has been the pass blocking.
Hmm.
Um, and I think you're facing an angry Nebraska defense
Yeah.
who I think is stronger on the lines. I think this game is actually going to tell you a bit more about Nebraska's resolve and resilience. I think a lot of people are looking at this last game against Illinois and being like, see, same old Nebraska.
Yeah.
Listen, Nebraska's a good team.
Yeah.
I think they're easily a top 25 team, which
Mhm.
I think tells you a lot about Illinois, who I think is also a top 20 team. And regardless of what happens in the game this Saturday, I think they are a top 20 team the way they're playing right now. But I think Nebraska, I'm not sure it's as close as the score is in this game because I think Nebraska might churn out to a 28 nothing or 24 nothing lead at half.
Yeah.
And then maybe some backups come in and Purdue gets a touchdown and a field goal in the second half, and Purdue doesn't really do much except a touchdown. But
Mhm.
I think it's I think the line is too low. I think Vegas is expecting Nebraska people to think that Nebraska is more on par with Purdue, and they're just not. Like Nebraska so much is I think much more superior to Purdue right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Matt Rule is a great coach.
Yeah,
I'm eager to see how the rest of this year turns out for him. But yeah, I think they'll be able to bounce back after a tough loss at home.
yeah. The 3:30 kick on CBS, Gary Danielson, Brad Nessler, is Wisconsin at number 13 USC. Wisconsin obviously coming off a bye. You know, they lost Tyler Van Dyke and they lost miserably to Alabama. It is a 14 and a half point spread to USC. And USC obviously coming off just a gut like gutting loss
Mhm.
against Michigan. Who do you got in this game and why?
Yeah, I have USC winning big, 38-13. I think the first quarter is going to fly by. I think USC is going to try and establish the run. I think Wisconsin losing Tyler Van Dyke is really going to speed up the game, and I think they're going to try and establish the run. Maybe even looking back as to what Michigan was able to do on the ground. Um, but yeah, I just don't think Wisconsin has enough to hang with USC. I think listening to some reactions to the USC Michigan game, and a number of people feel actually pretty good about USC, even after such a tough loss. You know, seeing them
Mm,
get punched in the mouth and be able to get up, you know, being down 14-0 and not just throwing in the towel, but being able to come back up and actually be in control in the fourth quarter, winning on the
yeah,
road after that tough start. I think USC is just going to pull away. But I do think it's going to be a really quick moving first quarter as both offenses are going to stay on the field maybe longer than expected.
yeah. That's I like your logic there, and I have it lower a lower margin of victory. I think my concern because I've seen some of those USC React videos. I would agree. I think the resilience really matters, and I think regardless of the fact that and they were resilient in a number of ways. Like I don't think officiating was the reason why they lost, but that game was very poorly officiated.
Yeah.
Very poorly officiated. I also think it's a credit to them. They went on the road. So I think you make a lot of good points. I think my concern with USC was my concern going into the Michigan game, and it has been exacerbated, which is
Mm.
their line play is not great.
Yeah.
It's good, but like against a defensive line like Michigan, I mean they just I mean Miller Moss got crushed.
Yeah.
And it's a credit to Miller Moss that they kept fighting and that they were able and the receivers and I thought that was, and I thought they did get stronger. And I think part of that is Michigan's defense got a little tired, and I think they figured some things out. But I think one, it's the emotions. You are going back home, but you've got the emotions. I think the other thing is Wisconsin is coming off a bye, and that gives Braden Locke some time to get more established with the ones. I think Will Pauling might be an issue for the USC defense. And I think Ches Malusi, I don't think their running game is nearly as good as Michigan's, but I do think it might sting them a few times. So I think USC wins a closer than expected game. I still think they win because I just don't think Wisconsin is great or even good. And I think the bye week's going to help. I think the bye week's going to help them to not get blown out. I think USC wins by 10. I've got 27-17.
Yeah. As a Penn State fan, I don't really have a great relationship with bye weeks because I feel like we don't always come out of bye weeks doing great. But maybe Wisconsin will do better. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it could backfire too. I've been very adamant. I have not been impressed with Luke Fickell's tenure at Wisconsin so far. So I can very well see your scenario playing out. I'm still not sure how good USC is.
Yeah.
And that's not a discredit to anything that they've done so far. It's just I'm just not sure. And I think Michigan is the same way. I'm like, I just don't know how good they are. But
quick question. So if you were to match up to put you on the spot, if you were to match up, I'm not sure how I would do this. If you were to match up USC this year and USC last year, who do you think would win?
I would pick USC this year because I think Miller Moss actually plays better in Lincoln Riley's system. And I do think Danton Lynn has changed the defense and helped them be more disciplined and I think he's getting more out of the players he has.
Yeah.
I I'll always choose a team not coached by Alex Grinch over a team coached by Alex Grinch. So, but I think the Caleb Williams factor is intriguing, but I think part of his struggles, and we're seeing that in the NFL too, like he plays too much hero ball. And I think part of why Miller Moss, I wouldn't say he's an upgrade, but why you haven't seen a ton of drop off offensively is because Miller Moss actually plays in structure really well.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious, what do you think about turning the question on you? Would you pick this year's or last year's?
Yeah, I think that point you made about Miller Moss fitting the system well. And I think too, I would pick this year. I think too, seeing the strides that the defense has taken, I feel like last year, just not looking into this, but just I feel like last year USC had a lot of turnovers, but they were like feast or famine on defense. They would either get a turnover or give up a touchdown. And I think we're seeing that gap shrink a little bit, where maybe they're not getting as many turnovers, but they're playing better overall as a defensive unit. So I think discipline for sure is definitely there this year, where it wasn't always there last year. So
I think that's a good assessment. Like they're not as feast or famine, and they're much more disciplined. But I think the talent deficiency is still there. So So we're picking 2024 USC over 2023 USC, and we are picking 2024 USC over 2024 Wisconsin.
Correct.
So
yes.
There we go. I think we know the answer to this one. Number 8, Oregon, playing at UCLA. It's Big Ten After Dark, 11 p.m. on Fox. I will watch this on Sunday. But Oregon's a 24-point favorite. Is Oregon going to have any issues in this game?
Yeah, let me check my notes. Blood will be shed. No, I don't think it will be that close to the game. People were joking. I think Oregon just needed to get out of the state of Ohio to wake up. But to give UCLA some credit, thinking back and to always throw shade on the SEC, like they got pelted by Indiana at home and then were able to keep it close for a little bit with UCLA
There
with
you go.
LSU on the road. So, yeah, I just don't foresee how this game is close, though. I think Oregon can pretty much name the score if they want to. So, yeah, let's see. I did write down a score: 45-10, Oregon.
Yeah. And for those of you, I think you meant Idaho, right? Not Ohio.
Oh, Idaho. Yes,
Yeah,
they
Idaho.
out of the state of Idaho.
Yeah. I just know like someone's gonna comment in the comments like it's Idaho,
Yeah.
Chris. And it's like you're speaking it into existence for later for when Ohio State beats Oregon, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
It's going to Oregon. Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway. Yeah, I got 52-10.
Mm-hmm.
Blood will be
Yeah.
I love that you put that in your notes. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love for UCLA to be good. I remember, when I was playing NCAA football, if I needed to pick a team other than Penn State, I feel like I usually picked UCLA. Just like the intrigue of picking a California school that I didn't know that well, but I like their colors. So, yeah, I would love for UCLA to take it up a few notches. I don't see it happening this week against the Oregon team that I think is really stepping into gear. So
yeah. Well, and they had a bye this past week. They're starting to round into form. Yeah, I just think and also to be fair, they played a really good Boise State team.
Yeah.
Like and should have lost that game.
Yeah.
But that game, like Boise State is not a scrub. And I keep putting them in my playoff bracket as my group of 5 representative because I think they're at the end of the day, I think they're going to have enough Power 4 wins plus that close loss to say, hey, we deserve to be in. But I think Oregon is the offensive line is getting healthy. I think Dylan Gabriel's getting more comfortable in that system. And unlike LSU, I think Oregon has too much talent, and I think they overwhelm UCLA from the start.
Yeah.
So
I did actually have another note here. UCLA's third down percentage rate on defense ranks dead last in the FBS. So I just don't see them really putting pressure on Dylan Gabriel. I think he's just going to be comfortable from start to finish.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's between him and Jordan James running the rock and that receiving core. Look out. Look out. I think maybe the best game of the slate. Number 19, Illinois, going to Happy Valley. Number 9, Penn State. James Franklin wants white out energy.
Yes.
It's exactly what he said in the press conference. He said, white out, ... energy.
Yeah.
He didn't say the dots, but which I think means that the students are going to show up wearing white on Saturday night. So this is a 7:30 kick on NBC. Penn State an 18-point favorite.
Yeah.
So sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
Oh, that's okay. I think more than just the students are going to be wearing white. I was a little surprised at first seeing the line come out, and maybe that was just because I got done watching the Illinois-Nebraska highlights. I actually didn't get to watch that game live. But yeah, I was a little surprised when that line came out. I was not expecting it to be so high. I think Luke Altmaier has the opportunity to really frustrate some Penn State fans. And boy, he's looked completely different from last year. If you remember back, I won't go so far to say that he handed Penn State the game, but he was really kind to keep giving us the ball whenever they were on offense last year. And this was when Penn State really couldn't do much on offense. So I think, yeah, Luke Altmaier looks like a totally different player. And I think, yeah, Pat Bryant, Zachariah Franklin, Illinois has a great chance to win this game. And I think they will keep it close for quite some time. There's also, on the Penn State side, there's a few injuries that I'm curious to see how they play into effect in the game. I think I'm curious to see what our secondary is going to look like going up against that receiver duo without having KJ Winston. We have a backup tight end, Andrew Rappelier, who's a freshman. I think he's a redshirt freshman, who is actually supposed to be one of our better blocking tight ends, along with Tyler Warren, and he's also out for a good bit. James Franklin isn't saying a season-ending injury, I don't think, but is I think he's calling them all long-term injuries. So we'll see what that means. So I think especially if Penn State's receivers struggle to get open, I think without having, I don't know, Penn State's run game has looked really good. Their offense has looked great. The schemes are like people are open running down the field, which is a great sight for a Penn State fan because we have not seen that. But yeah, I think that Illinois has a great chance to win this game. I think they will keep it close, but I think Penn State's going to pull away late. I do predict another slow start for Penn State because that is what we've seen this year. But I think they heated up a little bit in the second half, and I think Penn State's going to start pulling away late to win it 31-17 at home.
All right, so you got 31-17. Illinois covers there.
Illinois covers, yes.
Yeah. So I agree with everything that you said, and I think this is easily a fourth quarter game that I think Penn State puts out of reach, maybe with 3 minutes left in the game. Like that, I just think for the Penn State fans, if you're thinking that, well, Illinois is Illinois of the past, like Illinois has the personnel and the player, like not just the personnel, but the right players at the right positions to beat Penn State, even if Penn State plays their best game. Like if Illinois has the type of game, I shouldn't say if Penn State plays their best game. I think if Penn State plays a B+ game, Illinois can beat Penn State.
Sure. Because
I think I think the receivers have improved for Penn State, but that secondary for Illinois is nasty. I think Xavier Scott might be one of the best corners in the country. You know, they've had at least three different secondary guys have picks in that secondary. Frustrated Raiola, although Raiola had a decent game against them, but I mean, certainly frustrated Raiola a bit against Nebraska. I think the other thing that you have to realize too is that while I think Penn State's secondary is good, they have key losses in that secondary. This receiving duo of Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant is legit. And throw in their tight end as well, who had a good game against Nebraska. This is going to be a formidable passing attack. And Altmaier, he can scramble. He can buy time in the pocket. I think Illinois' offensive line and their pass blocking in particular has really improved. So they're keeping him clean. So like this is a game where I agree with you. I think Penn State fans are going to be frustrated for a lot of this game. And I think Altmaier has the talent and I think that has matured enough where I think he can pull off the upset. What I saw on Saturday though, and I know it was Kent State, I know it's cupcakes, man. Penn State might very well be like the number 2 team in the Big Ten, like jockeying with Oregon. And I don't think they're that far away from Ohio State. That D line, and like as good as I just talked about Illinois' offensive line, Denai Dennis Sutton, Abdul Carter, Zane Durant, like those boys can play. And I mean, they knocked out the quarterback in the second play of the game. I mean, and I don't want to laugh about injury, but it was just like, oh my gosh, like that's what you're bringing? Okay. The linebackers, you know, Tony Rojas, like them boys, they fly to the ball. The secondary, they've got depth. You know, so even though Winston's out, like they've got depth at the safety position, they got depth at the corner position. They have, and they've always been good there. Like, I mean, they've just churned it out. And then I think the other thing that I'm not convinced that the receiving room is elite or even great, but I think it's good enough, especially with Andy Kotelnicki pulling the strings. So I think it's 24-20 late. I think Penn State gets a defensive stand, and then Drew Aller leads a drive that puts it out of reach with about 3 minutes left. I got 31-20. So we're I think you had 31-17. I have 31-20.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure. I think this is another game where at the end, as Penn State fans, you really really thankful for Andy Kotelnicki, especially looking back in the last couple of years. So,
Yep. Yeah. He's a good one. He's a really good one.
mhm.
Well, Chris, we did it.
Yeah,
You participated in your first ever Big Ten Football Talk podcast. You think you'll do another one?
we'll see. We'll see. It's been fun. I've enjoyed being on here talking shop with you. So maybe I'll get an invite back. Maybe not. We'll see where it goes from here. So,
Yeah, I think I know the guy who controls the invite, so I'll talk to him and see what we
yeah,
can do.
I'll have my people talk to your people and we'll figure it out.
Sounds good. We'll do lunch. Well, for those of you listening, definitely, Chris, do you have social media or anywhere people can find you?
I do. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but don't ask me what my account is because I'm not sure what it is. But
All right, next time we're gonna put your Instagram handle on there. I think it's just Chris Ebersole, right?
probably it can't
Yeah,
be too complicated.
yeah. As if,
I'm sure it's just Chris.Ebersole or something like that. I'm sure.
yeah. So give him a follow, and make sure to like, subscribe. You guys know the deal. Appreciate y'all. Take care. God bless.